You guys have been asking me for months now to check out the Sonic Chaos Infection AU created by Chili Draws over on TikTok. And I have to say, this is one of the darker Sonic AUs that we've covered on this channel thus far. It reminds me of a more brutal metal virus in a way, so fair warning, if you don't want to see some of your characters in bad situations, this might be one to duck out of. Now, this AU starts out with us getting an emergency alert, and funny enough, it was sent out by Eggman. And we learn that he's putting out this alert because he's the person responsible for releasing this virus, which he has named the C virus, short for Chaos Virus. Apparently, on January 15, 2024, Eggman had an explosion occur in his lab while he was attempting an ancient echidna tribal ritual, which would have allowed him to duplicate the Master Emerald. But his calculations were off and he ended up almost blowing himself up and actually blowing up his assistant, Miss Cortez, infecting her immediately with the virus, showing us early on that this outbreak is heavily connected with chaos energy. Now, to my surprise, Eggman managed to avoid being infected altogether and was able to escape and release these notes, letting us know how the virus can spread. Now, there seems to be two ways that you can actually get this infection. The first is by getting bitten by an infected person. The good news here is that if you are bitten on a limb, you have 5 minutes to actually cut it off to avoid the infection fully sinking in. After 5 minutes though, you're toast. The infection will be too deep in your bloodstream for you to do anything. The other way to get infected is to be exposed to blood or spit on your skin or an open wound. So if you were to get blood on your hand or something, you would have 10 minutes to clean it off completely, or it'll seep in through your skin and slowly start to infect your body with the virus. And this is why Eggman is also encouraging people to cover up as much of their body as possible, wearing face masks and even helmets if they can. And the final pieces of advice that he gives is for people to stay inside their homes, not letting anybody in, even if they think that it's a friend. He also tells everybody to avoid the hospitals because a ton of people are going to start getting sick and they're going to be heading right there. And I just want to point out that things are really bad when Eggman is apologizing for the mess that he caused. Eggman almost never apologizes for all the shenanigans that he does. After that, we start to get the characters' info cards, starting with Amy Rose. In her image, we see that she actually has a bite mark on her arm, but it doesn't matter because she's immune in this AU. Apparently, at the start of the outbreak, Amy was bitten by an infected and locked herself in her home waiting to turn, but after weeks, she was still fine. Eventually, Sonic finds her and he takes her to the safe zone that they've created. And while Amy tried to keep her immunity a secret, not wanting to become a lab rat, she's found out in short order and taken away for testing by Tails. Now, when we see Sonic's info card, the first thing that I notice is that he's missing an arm. And this is because he actually got bitten while trying to save survivors and get them back to the safe zone. The good news is that Silver was able to chop off that arm before the infection could spread. And one thing I love here is that even though Sonic loses his arm, he still continues to be his normal heroic self, going out to save people and get any supplies that he can, while leaving Amy with Tails, obviously confident that his little brother will take care of his friend, and also find a cure. As we move over to Tails' info sheet, we see that he is hard at work trying to find out what's actually going on with this virus. Because even though he's only 17, everyone is counting on him to figure out what's going on, and we can see by his face here that he is under a ton of stress. The good news is that during this time, he had Cream by his side, and the two of them seem like they are more than friends in this AU. But one day, Infected attacked their warehouse, and Cream was separated from the rest of the team, and after weeks of not being able to find her, Tails had to accept that she was likely never coming back. And after that moment, Tails started to change. He was no longer a happy little kid, but rather this cold, heartless scientist whose only concern was finding a cure to this virus. And this is where things start to look bad for Amy, because at this point he's starting not to see her as one of his oldest friends, but rather just a lead to finding a cure, and he'll do whatever it takes to get results, even hurting her. Next, we get to see Cream, and technically she is alive, but she's infected with the C virus, and is at stage 5. We learn that during the attack on the warehouse, Cream ended up being bitten on her shoulder. And even though she and Cheese were still able to escape, Cream was now a ticking time bomb. She ended up running to an abandoned barn and hid there for a few weeks, hoping that Sonic would come to find her at some point. But slowly, Cream started to change, growing more and more hungry until she eventually tried to eat her own hand. And seeing that she was too far gone, Cream ends up telling Cheese to just leave her and go find help. But I think in reality, she just didn't want to accidentally hurt her little friend. So at the moment, she's still hiding out in this barn, slowly growing crystals over her body, hoping that Sonic or one of the other crew members will find her and be able to cure whatever's going on with her. Now, after seeing how Cream's body changed due to the infection, I think that this is a good time to actually look at the stages of the outbreak. Stage 1 starts after the first bite or exposure to blood. We see that the skin or fur starts to change color. The victim will also get a fever and start sweating a ton. Stage 2, they develop these hard bumps beneath their skin. The sweating gets even worse, while they also start feeling a ton of pain around the point where they were infected. By stage 3, we see green veins popping up, starting from the infection point and running down that part of their body. The victim will also start to lose fur and develop self-popping sores. And at stage 4, crystals start to grow out of the flesh around the infection point, but other parts of their body will start to decay. At this stage, they'll also just lose all their fur and develop a strong hunger. So much so that they'll eat themselves if they can't find anyone else, like we saw with Cream. Next, we see stage 5, and here's where the crystals get even larger and start to grow out of the wounds on their body. And as Eggman said early on, once the infection gets to this point, there is likely no saving them. The next character that we see is Knuckles, and I like how he has these little Wolverine things coming out of his glove here. On his info page, we learn that Eggman ambushed Knuckles and actually managed to knock him out and steal the Master Emerald. And with that, he also caused Angel Island to fall from the sky, which ended up hurting Knuckles even more, which is why he wasn't able to go after Eggman. But one piece of good news here is that in this AU, Rouge seems to have a crush on Knuckles, which is why in her info sheet, we see that she was on her way to Knuckles when Eggman attacked him. And she was the person that found him buried in the rubble, and is likely the only reason that he survived. Because even though at this time they didn't know about the outbreak yet, Rouge followed her instinct and got Knuckles to meet up with Sonic and the others instead of going after Eggman on his own. Next we see Shadow, and he's one of the first people to realize that something was really wrong. As we see here, he was holding an emerald when the outbreak started, and the gem went black in his hand. We also learned that Shadow has had some of his chaos energy drained out of his body as well, meaning that he isn't quite as strong as like the normal Shadow. And I like that as soon as this all went down, Shadow immediately went to Eggman's base, ready to put the man down. But once he saw that his lab was destroyed, he knew that he needed to team up with Sonic and the rest of the crew to figure out what was actually going on here. Next we see Eggman's info sheet, and most of the information is already known to us. The important part here is that Sonic and Tails ended up finding him a few months into the outbreak, and while Sonic doesn't want him on the team, Tails ended up vouching for the old man, saying that they need his mind if they're going to find a cure. And after that we see Silver, and I know I'm not the only person that's getting Trunks vibes here. Now, Silver got caught up in all this by accident. He was in this timeline to visit Sonic and his friends, but once the outbreak started, neither his portal nor his communication device was working. Meaning that not only could he not go home, but he couldn't contact Blaze. And if we're being honest, she would have been a huge asset here. But since he can't go home, he spends most of his time scavenging for supplies and lost Chaos Emeralds. And as I said earlier, on one of those missions, Sonic ended up getting bitten and Silver had to cut off his arm. And while Sonic doesn't seem to be holding a grudge, their relationship does seem a little bit different. In this short animation here, we get a closer look at what actually happened to Sonic and come to understand that Silver blames himself. And I'm happy to see that Sonic lets him know that he made the right choice, and at the end of the day, I think Sonic is absolutely right to say that, because if we're being honest, if he didn't take that arm, Sonic would be fully infected now, and that would be horrible for this AU, because Sonic is extremely powerful. Now back in the main story, we see that Tails is slowly starting to become colder and colder, and of course part of that is because he lost Cream, and more importantly, the fact that he's starting to forget her face, and even her voice. And with this coldness has come like this fanatic desire to find a cure, and as we can see here, he has started going a bit overboard with testing on Amy. And as of right now, she's enduring it because she wants to help make this world safe again for Sonic. I think seeing him lose his arm is like really fueling this for her, because she knows that he's still going to continue to go out and try to save people. So the faster she can help get a cure, the safer he and everyone else will be. And I find it interesting that at this point, the only person that seems to be picking up on the fact that Tails has changed is Rouge and Eggman. And this may be because Sonic and the rest of the team are too busy trying to save folks. In the next chapter, we get to see what happened to Omega, and as you can imagine, it wasn't good. When the outbreak was still fairly new, Omega and a bunch of the crew tried to get inside a bunker, but they were too slow on closing the door, afraid that they were leaving people behind. This allowed Vector, who ended up getting infected on Outbreak Day, to almost get inside the bunker, but Omega was able to block him. And since Omega knew firsthand just how strong Vector was, he knew that he couldn't allow him to get his claws on any of his friends. So he grabbed the gator and ran out of the bunker, also managing to hold off a bunch of other infected as well. And this gave the rest of his friends enough time to get the door closed, saving them all. Unfortunately, not even Omega could fight off so many infected, and he ended up being ripped apart. And while his death does suck, I have to say that this was a very accurate portrayal of what Omega would do in the comics, so head off to the creator here. I also like this little animation they made showing Shadow having a hard time dealing with his death while Rouge is trying to comfort him. But ultimately, in the current state of the world, they have no chance of bringing him back. Although I was really hoping for a Metal Virus moment where they are like able to save his head and keep him functioning, but sadly, my boy is gone. Can we get an Omega is the GOAT in the comments, please? Now, something else that I found interesting in Omega's post is that apparently Vector and Vanilla are married in this AU. And this is super cute because we all know that Vector has always had a crush on Vanilla. Sadly, when we see Vanilla's info card, we learn that Vector got infected trying to save her. He locked her in a small room and basically fought through all the infected, forcing them to chase him away from her hiding spot. Hours later, she was found by Shadow and taken back to the safe zone. And while she thought that she would find her daughter there, at this point, Cream had been separated from the crew and was hiding out in that barn. Now, in present time, Vanilla along with Tails, Shadow, and Rouge go out on a supply run. And while they're out, they find an abandoned barn. Vanilla ended up noticing that it looked like somebody may be hiding out inside, and she convinced Shadow to open the door. And of course, what they saw inside was Cream. Being overjoyed, Vanilla runs to embrace her daughter, saying, "Mommy's here, honey." But before she can reach her, we hear and Cream falls to the ground. And the person holding the gun is no other than Tails. And while in this animation, we see that he has tears in his eyes, that doesn't change the fact that he just did a terrible thing. Taking out somebody's child right in front of them is diabolical work. And Vanilla reacted as any mother would. While I understand that Tails probably didn't want Cream to infect anyone else, I feel like they could have at least tried to see if Cream was still able to communicate, especially since her crystals are purple instead of green. Maybe she has some kind of mutation that allows her to keep more of her mind. I mean, even at stage 5, she was still able to tell Cheese to run away and get help, meaning that she may have been a different type of infected. Put down what you think in the comments. Do you think Tail made the right call here, or should he have waited a little bit to see like if Cream was still conscious? In the next chapter, we get a little humanization from Tails as his stoic facade breaks and he starts bawling his eyes out, trying to come to terms with what he did. And I like how in this scene, he keeps seeing images of Cream and the thought murderer keeps popping up in his head, showing that not even he is sure that he made the right choice here. And I feel like this is the point where Tails really goes off the deep end and starts treating everybody like disposable tools. One of the first examples of this is when he sent Espio out to scout, even though he knew that it would be risky for him to go out alone. And in this image here, we see that Espio found an infected that seems to be past stage 5, meaning that it is extremely dangerous. And we don't even get enough time to really see who this character is because Espio camera loses connection. And at this point, he's been missing for at least 3 days. And when Eggman reports his information to Tails, he doesn't even seem to care, simply saying that it's unlikely that Espio escaped. And then he goes back to his research. Another example of how cold Tails has become is this scene with Amy locked away in the lab, sobbing all alone. And when Tails comes in, he has no remorse for her. He simply asks, "Why are you crying?" And he reminds her that she chose to sacrifice herself for the good of everyone else. And again, the only person that seems to be looking out for Amy is Rouge, telling her that she can't keep letting Tails experiment on her because eventually he will take her life. After that, we get to see Charmy in his info card, and just by his image, you can tell that he is going through it. At this point, Charmy has lost both Vector and Espio, and while he does still have Vanilla, after the death of Cream, she's obviously pretty traumatized as well. And that is why in this clip here, where Charmy is saying that he wants to go out and actually find Espio, Vanilla is screaming for him to stay where it's safe, and she ends up calling him Cream. And this actually makes a lot of sense when you consider that Cream and Charmy are around the same age, and also that Vanilla and Charmy were close even before the outbreak. She simply doesn't want to see another child get hurt. In this small animation here, we also get to see that she keeps having visions of her daughter, first as a child, and then after Tails put her down. I honestly feel bad for both Charmy and Vanilla. They are really going through it in this AU, and I think they've probably suffered the most out of anybody so far. Now, over with Shadow, we see that he has finally found some time to go check on Amy, and he asks why she hasn't left the lab yet. And even though she's going through some extreme testing, she keeps it a secret from him. And if you're wondering why Shadow is blushing in this scene, it's because he actually loves Amy in this AU. We get even more evidence of this in this small animation where we see Shadow watching Amy and Sonic together while he's off to the side. And when we zoom in here, we can see that he has a broken heart. And I don't know if Shadow and Amy ships are very common, but I think this is the first time I've actually seen one in an AU. Funny enough, it's usually Sonic and Shadow. And speaking of Sonic, we get another small scene where he comes to check on Amy, and we see that she looks completely exhausted here, but she refuses to even let Sonic know what's going on with Tails. And this is going to prove to be a really bad choice from her, because over with Tails, we see that he is going deeper and deeper into madness now. We even get this scene where he is remembering Cream before the infection, and we see how happy he looks, and then we see how broken he is after her death. And while I want to feel bad for Tails, I simply think he's just gone too far, and we still have a few chapters to cover in this AU. And I was right to say not to feel bad for him, because in the next chapter, we get this scene.
You know, I think I just realized because of your incessant whining, your constant buzzing and pestering, bug, whining and buzzing, whining and buzzing and whining and buzzing and whining and buzzing.
Now, this original audio is from Doof Guy, I believe, but the creator does a really good job of finding certain TikTok audios to go with his animations, and this one was perfect. I think it very accurately showcases just how crazy Tails is acting now, and also how he really doesn't care about Amy or the pain that he's putting her through. Now, luckily after that depressing scene, we get some hope with Espio still being alive, even though he's lost his horn. We see that he's running through the halls of this building, trying to get away from that infected that he found before the camera died. We also get to look at the notes that he's written, and it turns out that he's been gone for weeks at this point. The good news though is that while he was being chased, he did manage to lure the infected away from the safe zone. But as he was running, the infected managed to hurt his leg pretty badly, likely fracturing it, if not outright breaking it. Luckily, Espio was able to make his way to Eggman's lab and shelter there while he healed. And while he was able to find food and water there, he was really desperate to make his way back to Charmy because he knows how worried the kid probably is right now, and he's absolutely correct. After 13 days, Espio's leg was still not healed enough to run on, so he decided to look around the lab for more supplies. And once he got to the other side of the building, he could hear growling and banging. And while Espio doesn't know who it is, we know that this is the infected Cortez, and she has been in there for months at this point. Espio ends up going back to his side of the facility, not wanting to alert the monster of his presence, but it looks like that didn't work. Cortez must have caught his scent and then sneaked up on him. And I find it interesting that this creature's crystals are rainbow. I wonder if that's what happens to people who have been infected since the start, or if it's because they took the initial explosion head on. The next scene starts with Espio doing his best to get away with only one leg, but eventually he falls, and the infected is hovering over him. And while he tries to go invisible, he doesn't have the stamina to do it. And right when it looks like this may be the end for Espio and he's saying his goodbye, shedding a tear, a blue ball comes out of nowhere and rams into the infected, revealing Metal Sonic. And I'll be honest, I was so hyped to see this dude pop up because we really need some help right now in this AU. And while I still think Omega gets the GOAT title for this AU, Metal is definitely a second right now because he came in clutch here. Now, after that crazy animation, we cut back over to Tails, and we see that he is still struggling with finding a cure, and also everything that he and his friends have lost. And we see that he's kind of pumping himself up to do something terrible to Amy. And in this clip, we can see glimpses of this, with the way that he only looks at Amy with anger and hate now. Almost as if he thinks it's her fault that he can't find this cure. And it's so weird because Amy has given up so much to try to help this cause. You can literally see that both of her arms are completely wrapped up now due to all the syringes and samples that Tails has taken from her. And in the next chapter, we see that the tests get even more brutal. And it's crazy when you hear the scream that Amy lets out here and then compare that to this heartless expression that Tails has on his face. It's really kind of sickening. But what makes it even worse is that Rouge can hear all of it. And at first, I didn't understand why she could hear the scream, but Knuckles, who is asleep right next to her, couldn't. And I had to remember that Rouge is literally a bat, so she has super hearing. But I wonder what she's going to actually do with this information, because if she tells Sonic, I think he would go berserk, or even Shadow, really. Now, as a side note, for my people wondering why Knuckles is in the bed with Rouge, there are a lot of ships in this AU. And this clip right here shows Knuckles confessing his love to her. He basically said that he doesn't want to waste any more time, especially with the world being so dangerous and messed up right now. And I don't think anybody's surprised to see Knuckles go after Rouge, especially in this scene right here where she's got that
double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon, hella.
After that scene, we get to see Amy again, and she is telling herself over and over to keep going, remembering that she is doing all of this for her friends and family. And to my surprise, it's Eggman that kind of steps up to call out what's happening with her. In this update log, he speaks about the fact that Tails has gone too far in his pursuit of a cure. Basically, Eggman has only been allowed to see Amy during the day because the nighttime is when Tails does all his tests. But he is no longer just taking blood and skin samples, but actually pieces of her. As we can see here, he put her to sleep and then he takes one of her fingers. He also no longer allows her to bathe and only feeds her the bare minimum amount of food, telling Eggman that it would just be a waste of resources to give her more. He's truly treating her like she isn't even a person anymore. We also learn that the person who has been wrapping and cleaning Amy's wounds is Eggman, and in this image you can see just how bad Amy looks and how sad Eggman is about this whole situation. And the reason that he looks so depressed is deeper than I thought. Apparently, the only reason that Amy is immune in the first place is because Eggman kidnapped her years ago, long before this outbreak started, and he injected her with chaos energy, and that seems to be why the bites don't affect her. In the next scene, we cut back over to Tails speaking with Sonic, and while he still doesn't know about Amy, he does realize that something is very off with Tails. And while he's trying to get him to open up and talk to him, Tails just says to leave the emerald and leave, showing us again that he is hell-bent on pushing away all his friends, even though it clearly hurts him. And in the final chapter of this series so far, we see so much of it leads back to the fact that he is still so beat up about losing Cream, and the fact that he is slowly forgetting what she looks like. I feel like finding this cure now is kind of more of an obsession, because in a way, I think Tails believes if he gets this cure and he rids the world of these infected, it'll be like a sense of revenge in a way. But I still wonder if he even needed to take out Cream to begin with. Honestly, she wasn't aggressive like these other infected that we've seen throughout this AU, and if Tails ends up figuring out later that he may have been able to save her, I think he is really going to break at that point. Also, I really believe that once Rouge or Eggman let Sonic or Shadow know what's going on with Tails, they may actually come to blows, because Tails is simply cruel in this world. There's no real way to mince those words. But with that being said, let me know what you thought of this AU down below. Check out this video on the screen next and hit that join button to become a member of the Orseofkorse. Peace, peace.